Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hey, hi everybody. How you doing? I just realized I have this thing is playing double on my other computer. I just got to quit this real quick. Hey, hi everybody. How you doing? Okay, hold on. Okay, so sorry about that. Hey, so I'm here with my very good friend Chris Shelton, and we have a really high impact discussion to have for you guys today about one of Scientology's biggest and most expensive scams, superpower. But before we get into that, what's on everybody's mind today is, of course, the Danny Masterson sentencing, and we both would like to comment on that. So let's welcome Chris. And I would, first of all, I'd love to hear what you think of what do you think, Chris, about the sentencing?
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many thoughts. And I'm glad, thank you for giving me the opportunity to parallel this stream on my channel as well. So we're both running concurrent right now, which is awesome.
Right. So open up 2 tabs and watch us both.
That's right, exactly. Hey, Chad, I see you out there. Okay, so God, so many thoughts. First off, and the biggest one, and I guess I'll just kind of lead with this because it's the thing that's on my mind the most about this is the finality of it and the justice of it, because it's a vicarious justice for all of us, right? I mean, it's kind of like it wasn't Scientology on trial, it was Danny Masterson on trial, and yet it was Scientology on trial because they covered it up and it was all shown. It was all there. And, it could, obviously I'd love to see Scientology on trial, but lacking that, like, this feels like a really big step in that direction of that eventuality, of that future, of that possibility that maybe the FBI, maybe some of these law enforcement agencies might see that it actually can be done, that this can happen, that criminal charges can be brought against this organization or against a member of this organization and successfully prosecuted. And I think the public will is on the side of prosecuting Scientology. And so it feels like a really huge step forward for all of us, although of course, this is the victim's day. This is their day for justice. And so I literally can only imagine how they feel about this. But this is a long time coming, and so those are my thoughts right off. How about you?
Well, the first thing I thought, this one thought keeps creeping through. I was working for the church back when the first issue of that giant thick book, What is Scientology? Remember that book?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was just gigantic. And David Miscavige scrutinized every word of that book. And one of the things that he made a big deal about, there was a section on statistics comparing Scientologists to the general public. And that book claims statistically and displays a graph that Scientologists do not commit crimes. And I can't help but think, I wish I had a copy of that book so that I could put that page up and send it everywhere, put it on the internet. Absolutely, this was one of the big selling points of Scientology, that when people are in Scientology, you don't have to worry about them committing crimes. And of course, not only do they commit crimes, but the church also protects them. And even if they get in trouble internally, it doesn't never get outside. And then it also does, it shames victims and tries to blame them for their own situation. So that was like my first thought, because I mean, I contributed somewhat to that book, and I was just like, oh my God. I mean, I thought it was kind of silly when it happened. I mean, when he put it out there, but so many dominoes have fallen on this idea that Scientologists don't commit crimes since that book was published. You have the big financial criminals who went to prison, like the Reed Slatkins and the others that are either also went to prison or going to go to prison, and and now it's not just in financial stuff, but it's, real hardcore criminal stuff. Chris, I also have to think, and this is maybe not the day to be talking about it, but I have to think, like, what good comes out of this? I mean, this whole thing, the whole thing saddens me. I'm happy for the victims. I hope that they're having an opportunity to get in front of the court, to get in front of Danny Masterson. The court provides this opportunity and actually confront him. I hope that helps them. Truly, I hope that they're able to find some healing in all this. I think the outpouring of support they had from especially so many ex-Scientologists and the world in general should help them. But it also just reminds me of what a state humanity is in, that these kinds of things happen. We have a long way to go. And I'm sorry for being so like high concept about the whole thing, but and so I had to ask myself, so what good really came of all this? The only good is what you said about bringing it closer to the possibility that the Church of Scientology will be held accountable. Because, you can't say if Danny Masterson would commit another crime or not. Does he deserve it? Sure. It's a little biblical in my mind. He got wrath of God punishment.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
So is that worth? You know what I'm saying? I do.
So
I really do. The only good is that, like, does this stop Danny from having more victims? Probably, maybe not. But who needs to be stopped is the Church of Scientology. They're the ones that need to be held accountable, because for every Danny Masterson, God knows how many more people they're protecting and how many more victims they're blaming and threatening with a horrific outcome if they report their crimes to the police. That's my thought. Sorry to.
No, not sorry at all. That absolutely, I totally track with what you're saying. Let me add something to the mix here, because this is something I think Tony and I have discussed, and it's worth saying again, because there's a I'm not a karma guy, right? I'm not a spiritual guy. I'm not that guy, right?
Right.
I don't refrain from using the words because they communicate concepts that are absolutely like how we feel about how things happen. And there's karma here. There is karmic justice in Masterson's sentencing today. And the reason
there is. And might I just say, Chris, interject
Mm-hmm.
quickly, that karma doesn't care if you believe in it. So,
exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, whatever, right? Maybe there is some cosmic scale of justice out there. And if so, hey, I wish it would bend more towards, Scientology right now in prosecuting them. But it's worth noting that had Danny Masterson not gone along with the Church of Scientology's machinations to cover everything up and not turn him in and not make this an issue back in the early 2000s, then he probably would have faced prosecution, and he probably would have gone to jail for 5 years, 7 years, and he'd be out, and it would be done, and it would have been a scandal, and then everybody would have, and it would have been scandalous, and it would have gone in with the timing at the time. It would have been kind of perfect for, what came after with Anonymous and Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch and all that. It was around that time period that all of that would have happened. But the point is, it could have all been just kind of gone and done and over with right now if they hadn't done what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, plus, even if he got 30 to life back then, that was in the early 2000s. And so, he'd be 7 to 10 years away from freedom instead of he's going to spend, potentially being paroled. I shouldn't say freedom.
No.
Yeah,
in a way, even after he gets out, and I don't know that people appreciate this enough, not that it's enough of a punishment by itself, but to bring this to light. This guy's a registered sex offender now for the rest of his life. And that means when he does get out, every 90 days, he's got to go re-register and re-up with, as I understand it, with the authorities. So he's never going to be free again in that sense.
Right. You're right. I mean, but I think most importantly for me, that the attention is going to be put on the Church of Scientology upcoming lawsuit. The same victims are suing the church. They're suing David Miscavige. So, hopefully there'll be some accountability there.
Absolutely. And with this conviction and the sentencing, it makes that civil trial so much smoother. It
does. Yeah. Because now one of the defendants in the civil trial is a convicted sex offender who's in prison for life. So it's
That's right.
You
And
know,
then there's
he can't say, but they found me innocent at the.
exactly. And then the other defendant is literally the organization that covered it all up. And it's right there in the paper trail. It's all in the evidence chain.
Right. Well, I hope,
testimony.
yeah, I hope to see certain individuals, not to be mentioned, and Julian Schwartz, who would just end up in a boatload of trouble because they deserve it. Their crimes are horrendous. They're the people that did the cover-ups. They're the people that protected criminals, and endless, and on and on and on. And the fact of the matter is, Scientology, I know this because I made the films that trained their practitioners. They train people that Scientology has the tools, has the ability to take somebody like Danny Masterson and rehabilitate him and make him okay, and then to take the victims and to heal them and make them okay. And it convinces people that they can do that, and then it turns around and it protects him, and it brutalizes the victims, and it's a horrific crime.
Yes, exactly. It's the epitome of why, all in a nutshell. It's all right there. Why we are speaking out, why we're doing what we're doing. It's all right there.
Exactly. Look no further. So I guess with that we can. It's almost difficult to talk about superpower, but that's what we promised.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do. A lot of people. Now I'm curious. Just give me your perspective. Like, what is superpower, and how is it in terms of how it's presented to the public? What do Scientologists think about it? We're going to both talk about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Superpower has been. Oh, thank you for that super chat, Steph. Superpower is something that I'd known about as a Sea Org member, for many, many years before it finally came out. But it was only in reference to a very small paragraph in a very, sort of minutia issue of Scientology and LRHED, executive director. And that was it. That's all you had, is this like supercharged, powerful set of rundowns that are going to, enable planetary clearing. That's literally how it was presented, was this is what's going to enable planetary clearing. And I thought that the Key to Life course and the Life Orientation course were the ramp up to that.
Right.
And you would get this incredibly powerful set of actions delivered to you that would turn you into super Scientologists, super Theta.
Right. Yeah. We thought he'd sort of cracked the code.
Yeah.
And this was going to be between those courses that you mentioned. The thing that made me want to speak out about it from my perspective is I worked on the fourth floor. The superpower, for those of you who don't know, it basically is comprised of two things. There's 12 auditing rundowns, which are very much like conventional Scientology auditing. There's a program, you go into a room with an auditor, you complete these 12 rundowns. I'm not that familiar with them. I mean, they're confidential. I didn't read them. We all know what the titles are. They're things like the Ethics and Justice Rundown, which is supposed to clear up all your past, ethics problems, whatever. But then when you're done with those 12 rundowns, you get to go onto the fourth floor at the Flag Building. Now, they built that building for two reasons. One, so they could have a running program in that dome at the top, which is known as cause resurgence. And two, so that they could have what are known as the perception drills for superpower, right? And those drills involve a number of machines and various other things. I'm going to have to, Chris, can you just give me a second? I got to let my dog out. You could just
not a problem at all. I have a few other things I can just talk about here with superpower. Yeah, these machines, by the way, that Mitch is talking about, we're going to talk about those, I think, in a lot more detail, because he actually had a lot to do with designing these damn things. But these things, what's called the perception rundown, is one of, I think, 12 or 13 different actions that you take on this set of actions called superpower. So you're going to do rundown number 1, and then you're going to do number 2, and each one is kind of a separate action, and together you walk through all of them, and you are, this amazing superpowered being. And all of these perceptions and tools and machines that are used to tune up your perceptions are just one of these many rundown actions. And it's called the perception rundown, because it's supposed to tune up and supercharge your perceptions, right?
Yeah. Basically the idea is that you've had horrible traumatic experiences known as engrams, and then these engrams are blocking your perception, and so your perception has been weakened, kind of like going to the gym and exercising your muscles. You're going to go into this superpower gym and you're going to exercise your perceptions. Now, the thing is I worked for about a year and a half on those drills. I designed and produced all of the drills that involve any kind of audio or stills or video film. And it just occurred to me not long ago when I was unpacking all this, there's nothing on the fourth floor that was created by L. Ron Hubbard. It was all made up. It's all bullshit. It was made up by me and a team of other people. The only connection it has to Hubbard, there's a listing of perceptions per him. There's 56 of them. I always forget the number.
I have the list, actually. I'm pulling them up right now. It's 57. Okay. Yeah, and some of these perceptions, I'll tell you, man, some of these are crazy, but go ahead. Go ahead.
They're really nuts. So basically what he did was, he said, here, these perceptions, you have to invent drills to drill each one. But he didn't say what the drills were. He didn't say, have them do this. And that was all he said. It was, here's a list of drills, here's a list of perceptions, invent a drill. So that was the assignment, was to invent these drills. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a lot of pressure and stuff, but then I looked at this and I looked at the marketing and I looked at what Scientologists, especially these big donors who paid for that building and so that they could bring this L. Ron Hubbard technology to the world. There's nothing on the fourth floor that has anything to do with L. Ron Hubbard other than the list of perceptions that he said to make drills for.
Yeah.
So did you want to reveal what some of the weirder perceptions
are? Absolutely. Yeah. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I mentioned earlier as well that Key to Life and that life orientation course, and it was the same thing with those. I thought those were L. Ron Hubbard designed, mega services that were life changing. Never had anything to do with them. It was so silly.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically remember him saying, reading that he said that the key to life is the key to clearing the planet. Yeah, and they said the same thing about superpower.
Exactly. Check these out. Okay, so there are some wild ones here. First off is some of the more esoteric ones. Let me go ahead and start from the top, actually, where they're not quite so crazy, right? Because you have sight, color, depth. This idea of relative sizes of things outside of yourself.
Right.
It's sound, right? Pitch of, is the tone, is the quality of the sound,
right.
Rather than the value, which is different from volume, which is different from the direction the sound is coming in. Every one of these are different perceptics, right?
Right. And they're based on something. They're all based on something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mm-hmm. They're like based on something. It's not like your ability to perceive I don't know, something that just would never exist. They're all based on some extra physical thing, which is what kind of makes them so dangerous, is that you can connect a line back to something.
Some of them are pretty wild. I mean, because we go to time, which sounds fairly normal, right?
Right.
Rhythm is listed on there. Personal emotion is one. Now, this is an odd one, though. Personal size, your perception of personal size.
Right.
There it is.
Well, so, some people, that has to do with body dysmorphia. I mean, there is such a thing, right? As body dysmorphia, like some people think they're fat and they're not. Some people think they're too skinny and they're not.
Oh, I get that.
But that's my point, is that they're based on real things. But let's say you had some kind of body dysmorphia and you had a problem with your perception of your size. That rundown is not going to help you. It's going to take your problem and it's going to park it off to the side and exploit some money out of you for addressing it. So exactly. You're not going to get help. That's why I say they're based on real things, which kind of makes them dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a couple of these that actually, when you talk about dangerous, this is where we start crossing the line here, I think, into where we're getting into imaginative perceptions.
Like magic thinking kind of.
Yeah. Like, check this out. Internal temperature.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say also saline content is another one.
Right, exactly. How much salt's in your blood, in your pores, or in your skin, or in your blood?
Right.
Obviously, external temperature is a perception that we have.
Sure.
Sense of balance, muscle tension. Yes, I'll go with all of those. Those are actually interesting to put on a list.
Magnetic fields, the ability to.
Right, exactly.
Magnetic fields.
But here's where we get into some of this more meta weird stuff, right? Awareness of awareness. This is one of the 57.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Awareness of awareness. Now, Hubbard refers to spirits and thetans as awareness of awareness units. They are aware of being aware. And this is supposed to be some magical phrase that differentiates them from anything else that's alive. That's the whole concept of life.
I mean, Chris, you need to know how aware you are of being aware of being aware.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a real problem if you weren't aware of how aware you were of being aware.
That's absolutely true. Personal position on the tone scale, which I guess is different from personal emotion, which is a differently listed perceptic. I find that interesting.
Right.
But then we get into some true, as listed on here, some true superpower stuff, right? Endocrine state.
Yeah, that would be the level of adrenaline, and those kinds of different things.
Right. But there's a number of hormones that are flooding through your system at any one time, and you're not going to be micro aware of the different levels of each one. You will only be able to make the grossest, most vague approximations based on your ability to perceive your own body. The brain tracks that kind of stuff in a process called interoception, but you're not consciously aware of that stuff.
Right.
Right.
Can you hear my dog?
I can, yeah. Is he okay back there?
What is happening? He's like freaking the hell out. I don't know what to tell you, Weston. I'm live right now, so I can't really help you. Oh, hold on. Let me just get him something.
Absolutely. Yeah, these perceptions are hilarious. Thank you, Rev Girl, for your super chat. Just awesome stuff, guys. If I don't catch everyone as we're going, it's because I'm flopping back and forth on my tabs here as I'm going. But there are some other ones like compass direction. Okay, this is supposed to be a perception that you have, like internally you can sense that. I don't think that's true for everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that?
Oh, the compass direction one. Right?
Yeah, some people, it's the old adage that like women, it's just this misogynistic thing that women can't tell directions, which is maybe true. Men can't find a jar of mustard in the fridge,
Exactly.
I'm surprised that that's not a drill, right? Like how to find the mustard in the fridge, because I'm bad at that. They say, women see details and men see shapes. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Yeah, but there's a lot of cliches. But yeah, so pretty crazy. So one of the things is the history of superpower, like where it came from, is a really fascinating story. Because as you said, as a Sea Org member, it was a very small thing. Because originally it was aimed at staff. It was just something for staff to really help them get a boost up. Because staff, after all, they're the people that are carrying the ball, and they're the people that are going to, really run the show and clear the planet. So it all goes back to films, because so much of the stuff goes back to the Hubbard wanting to make films. And so he was at La Quinta. I'm trying to think, it was the late 70s. He moved to a desert compound, La Quinta, California. It's near Palm Springs. He had gone to Sparks, Nevada. Chris, when was the FBI raids on Washington and LA? Which
77.
Okay, so when the raids happened, he was at La Quinta. He fled La Quinta and he went to Sparks, Nevada, and he hid out there because he was worried that he was going to be dragged into it. And a lot of this I had verified by Janice Gilliam Grady. She was there when this was happening. And so while he was in Sparks, he instructed the staff back there. And, David Miscavige was 16 years old and he became the cameraman. And he instructed them to start learning how to make films, because he was going to come back and they were going to start making films. And he did. He came back. They'd read some books. famously, they'd read this book, The 5 C's of Cinematography, which was a textbook I had in college, and it's a wonderful book. Hubbard did manage to find some basic film texts that are quite good. They're easy to find. He didn't unearth some lost technology about filmmaking. He basically consulted the syllabus of major film schools and just took books up of there. But it didn't matter because the films were horrible. They were just terrible, unreleasable. They did, that's where they did the professional TR's course film. They shot it at La Quinta, which was a date farm, and they had a warehouse, a very tiny warehouse where they shot films. The films were horrible. So Hubbard wanted to address the staff's disability, their inability to make filmmaking, to make good films. He wanted to get to the bottom of this, and it never occurred to him that it might have to do with a lack of experience and a lack of talent and a lack of suitability. What he decided was their inability to make films was a spiritual deficit. In other words, they needed to be spiritually enhanced, and that would solve the problem. So his answer was superpower. Okay, so he came up with this stuff because he thought, if I just can really increase their ability to perceive, then they'll be better filmmakers. Of course, it never worked because the films continued to be horrific for decades. And finally in the 1990s, they hired me. We got some films done. I'm not trying to toot my horn, but that is the background of superpower. And then so it always sort of floated around as this thing, and then Miscavige decided to develop it into a service, just like they did with the running program, which was originally a punishment that they decided that they could. I saw it at Gold when they ran it. Everybody that did their running program, and they were in serious trouble running around a palm tree in 100-degree weather for 8-10 hours a day with short little breaks. So he sold that. Miscavige figured out how to turn that into a service and sell it to people. But so the superpower thing, they'd been working on that for about, I don't know, at least a year or two. They'd hired a company in Florida that made amusement park, rides and exhibitions and stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Disney Imagineering. I don't know. Do you know what that is? Yeah, this would be like a B team, like a poor man's Disney Imagineering. They hired these guys. They do stuff for amusement parks. They wasted $1 million. Miscavige got frantic. He contacted me and he said, "You need to go to LA and work with the superpower team." Right. So I went down there. They'd already designed the machines. That thing you get in, it's like a gyroscope, and they did some of the machines.
Big thing. I mean, you literally climb into it and you get spun around, and it's supposed to like spatially tune up your spatial perception.
Yeah. It helps you to figure out where you are, body position in space. I mean, the thing is based on a standard exercise machine, which they just took, and they had a very gifted machinist turn it into something that looked like, it was made by NASA or something like that.
Right.
And so, and they'd taken some pictures of these, and they teased them with like big donors, like they started really marketing it, because the superpower was a major marketing instrument for bringing money in to build the building. So there was it was a pretty frantic scene. And I worked for Golden Era Productions. The superpower was a CST project, the Church of Spiritual Technology. You've spoken about them, because I think that's the secretive church that owns the L. Ron Hubbard Library. They actually own all of the technology of Dianetics Scientology. They own the secret sites, the burial sites where all the
did you ever go to any of those sites?
No,
by the way?
I never did. I probably could have if I asked, but I worked on videos about them. I worked on the film preservation, which went into the vaults, and I worked on the video presenting it. I mean, I'm super familiar with it. I'm really pissed I didn't go, because it's not far from Gold, the one where Shelley has been banished.
Right.
It's not far. I mean, you could get there probably in an hour from Gold.
Yeah, she's away from there. Just up in the
Sorry,
mountains.
yeah, it's up, but it's beautiful up there. It's really nice.
Oh, it's gorgeous. We
mean,
vacationed there as when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be banished, that's like, it's not a bad place to be banished.
It's pretty beautiful up there. I will say that.
Yeah.
Although I know I'm not jealous of her life in any way, but it's a nice place to live up there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, let's just fingers crossed the whole place doesn't burn down, because that would be, they've had some incredible fires. And this year we've had a lot of rain, and we could have we're getting into the season in Southern California where we get these horrific dry winds off the desert, and the forests can just explode into flames. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Shelley will make it out in an EMT truck with some nice young firemen giving her a cup of coffee and saying, "It's okay, we got you." But who knows? But that's if they can get through the ex-special forces that are guard that place.
Exactly.
I mean, getting into that place is like 0 dark 30. But anyway, no, the answer is that. But I was doing the job for CST, right? And I was told, this is really interesting. I was told, you cannot spend a dime of Golden Era production money, of church money. You cannot. This is 100%. It's some corporate tax thing. There has to be separate accounts. So because I was a gold guy, like I was their head director,
right?
And you can't use any of those resources, and you can't use any of the money, right? So it was being done in LA. I worked with a very talented bunch of Sea Org members who had, some of them had been trained by apprenticing in Hollywood special effects houses, really knew what the hell they were doing. And,
wow.
Yeah, a couple of them had gone and spent those people are either back at CST or they're at Scientology Media Productions, right? But if you want to know why, like you look at the network, a lot of the graphics is really super professional and polished. I mean, some of them went and apprenticed, like literally got jobs, like Sea Org members working at special effects houses. So,
wow.
Yeah, as part of like for a year.
Did the people who were tutoring or mentoring or interning them or whatever, hiring them, did they know they were coming from Scientology?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, but these were very artistically talented young people, so they didn't mind having them, and they had Sea Org work ethics, and you know what that's like. They're like, "Hey, you could just lock me up in the backyard with a bowl of water, and I'll work all night."
Yeah, so, basically, that's how it is.
Yeah, so they did. There's a couple of them that I'm thinking of that are really spearheaded the graphics at the studio. Those guys could walk out tomorrow and get spectacular jobs. They could be doing great. I mean, I think that's the real tragedy of it, that they have some super talented people. So I worked with those guys, got the whole thing. Then the whole thing was really falling behind to the point where Miscavige was really worried because, he has to answer to donors. I mean, I've heard this crap. I've heard him explode and say, I got donors that are like, like bugging him. I don't remember exactly what. One time I remember what he said, but like I got to answer to donors. Like that was a big thing, and I'm like, and I really started to get the idea. Well, that's what this is really all about. This is about raising money, because I never heard him say, the world needs superpower. I heard I got to answer to the donors, right? So
exactly. He only dragged it out for years and years and years.
I mean, well, but then it was dragging itself out, Chris, and he was freaking out. It wasn't getting done.
It was so ridiculous. I mean, even the superpower building probably paid for itself not paid for itself, but was fundraised for 3 times over. I mean, it was just ridiculous how much money they were making off of that whole enterprise.
Yeah, and that's a really typical strategy that I ran into the first job I ever did for the church. We'll talk about that later. I ran into this strategy where they took the production costs of the spot, which was not very much money, and they sold that. How would you like to pay for X? Then the next guy, how would you like to pay for X? And there must be all these different people thought they paid for the whole thing.
Exactly.
And I had this was a project I did for CCHR in the 80s. And I was talking with the executive about it. And she said, well, you have to understand, you have to sell them something, right? Like you can't say, donate money to CCHR, right? You have to say, we need paper clips and paper and a new Xerox machine. Like it has to be for something. Like now it's totally solved because it's for buildings. but it's it's always for something. It's not like the Mormon Church, they just donate money because they know it's not specifically for a thing. Lots of other religions donate money. They know that it goes to feed the poor and heal the sick. I mean, the Catholics, the Catholic Church, people don't know, they provide over 25% of all the healthcare on the entire earth is provided by Catholic organizations. So I know that's a lot of it's in third world countries, but that's a fact. You can look that up. All these places, St. Joseph's Hospital or this or that, all those places, they're all Catholic organizations. And there's a lot of them in poorer countries, emerging countries. So, you donate money to them, you put your head on the pillow at night, I'm helping people. It's not quite that. And Scientology does something like that with its quote unquote social betterment programs, like we help illiteracy or we help morals or whatever. But the thing you brought up, I didn't mean to get off into it, that you take a thing like I remember the cross on the top of the flag building.
Exactly.
They sold that over and over. There's probably 100 people that think they paid for the whole cross. Yes.
That was the entire basis of Luis Garcia's lawsuit.
That's right. That's
Scientology.
Right. That's right.
And it would have gone through, and it absolutely would have been a great case if they hadn't had that religious contract law card to play, an arbitration, and that's how they played that. And so the fraud never got in front of a court, but that was exactly what he was accusing them of, was triple dipping on these things.
Yeah, and they would absolutely do it, and it was totally justified, and they thought it was okay because what they do is they'll take a physical thing and then they'll turn that into a conceptual commodity to raise money. And they think that is actually okay, and it's just good marketing. So with regards to superpower, it got horribly behind. And then one day, Mark Yeager, a lot of people know who Mark Yeager is. He's a CMO 8 guy who's Miscavige's one of his favorite punching bags and bulldogs, right? And he came up to me and said, "Okay, listen, Dave needs you." He says you can finish superpower at gold. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, I was told, like, don't spend a penny. Like, all of a sudden it changed. It was like, no, we have to get it done. You can go, you have carte blanche at gold to finish it. So then, I just activated everybody and did a bunch of stuff and produced a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was a lot of work. And then we got it done over about the next year and a half. So it was very strange. I never actually understood how that whole thing got reorganized that way, but it was interesting. It was I could go on about it.
I can't really understand the process of that either, because I'm not sure what legal considerations are between CST and CSI and what the differences are there, because gold obviously falls under it is its own incorporated Church of Scientology.
Yeah, it's actually a subsidiary of the Church of Scientology International.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's owned by the mother church.
Is a whole CST is a whole
100%. Yeah, separate. It's an entirely separate corporate structure.
Yep.
So I never really understood how that worked. I know I had to get it done.
It even actually was a legal requirement, as you've gone, out of your way to point out from time to time so correctly. People like Miscavige tell somebody one thing and then tell somebody else something else, and they can change the rules anytime they want.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible that it had nothing to do with corporate structure. It just had to do with Miscavige's whims, and he just didn't want this, or he wanted that, or he wanted some control this way, or he was siloing it this way.
Yeah,
the guy has crazy ideas.
That could very well be, because absolutely, he could have just said that because it was like some kind of a power thing. It could have, to be honest, Chris, I assumed that it had to do with finances and tax, corporate structure, and protecting their tax exemption, because the way I was admonished you cannot spend one penny of gold money. You can't use gold resources. Like to me, it felt like I was being told that these things exist in walled gardens of each one their own. They can't penetrate or cross over. But suddenly all that changed, and we were getting it done. So. But there's some
right? So
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know why. Yeah, absolutely. The rules don't exist. The rules, he makes the rules. That's all there is to it. I heard somebody say about like this thing that's the relationship he's in with his assistant, Lou. Somebody
Yes.
say, well, you know, if Scientologists knew that, they wouldn't tolerate that. I'm like, that's utter bullshit. They'd tolerate anything that guy does until they become abused enough themselves that they say, wait a minute, let me take another look at this.
That's right. Let me,
You know,
and
yeah,
in
go
fact,
ahead.
let's say even more accurately for the audience, since we're trying to teach about this stuff. It's not that they let him get away with it. It is that he must be right. He cannot, as the leader, be wrong, and therefore, what they think they see, they don't see, or they
That's
to
so
make it
true.
okay.
That's so
That's what
true.
happened.
Yeah. Plus, even if possibly you think, it's like, well, I don't care because he's going to get us to where we all want to go.
That's
So
it, right?
I'm gonna like nobody else is going to do that. So yeah. So there anyway. It's a very complicated scene. It's not just an evil despot in charge of a bunch of brainwashed idiots. It's way more complicated than that. So,
That's right.
yeah.
That's
anyway, worthy of study.
I wanted to get back on the superpower for a second because I
Yeah.
was thinking about the history a little bit. And one other thing I wanted to say to people about this is, you mentioned this earlier, but I kind of wanted to underline and boldface it for a second. And that is that it was meant for the staff.
Yeah, originally.
It was not meant to be a public service first, and then we'll let some of the staff in on it. It was supposed to be delivered to the staff, period. It was the thing that was going to enable planetary clearing. And so the staff had to get it first, because according to the strategy that Hubbard laid out, that's the concentric circles of expansion, is staff first, then the public.
Right.
And Miscavige completely turned that all the way around because he saw it as an income opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, as I recounted earlier, he came up with this for the silliest reason in the world, like this idiotic idea that a bunch of just, you know, they weren't all kids, but I want to say kids because I always think of Dave as being 16 years old and being the camera person. And they were quite young. There were a bunch of messengers. Some of them were really good, you know, nice kids. They were very loyal to Hubbard. And he's like, okay, we're all going to be film. You know, some of them were dishwashers and gardeners, and we're all going to be filmmakers. And then he's like, oh, your film, what's wrong? You can't make films. Okay, it must be a spiritual problem. And that was just like, So, yeah, so it was first just aimed at this crew that were making films. It was never supposed to be for the public. And I got to tell you, when I was finishing it off, I was told personally by David Miscavige that he expected Superpower to bring in $10 million a week. It never did.
10 million a week?
$10 million a week. And I was working on this program. I was kind of, maybe it was 5. I don't know. Maybe I'm just pissed off and I made it 10. Let me just say it was millions of dollars a week. And I kept thinking, fuck, they should give me some of that money. I should be getting residuals. I'm doing this whole goddamn thing. And I'm going to get maybe a t-shirt. Well, I'm going to get a nice paycheck every week, but I was really pissed about that. When I heard that, I'm like, oh man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was that never happened. I don't think they ever made anywhere near that amount of money.
I doubt it. I remember clearly when Flag, pretty clearly, I think. I remember when Flag had their very first $1 million week. And I mean, it was world celebration. I mean, it was like, 10 million.
No, it was multi-million. Maybe it was only 5 million. I don't know, but it was some multiple of $1 million a week between Cause Resurgence and Superpower. That people were just going to be signing up for this thing like gangbusters. You know. Anyway, somebody asked earlier if I had something to do with.
I guess they thought it was going to be the better mousetrap.
Yeah, well, it's always the better mousetrap. I mean, that's and he does believe it too. He just doesn't make these things up as scams. He actually believes it. That's my own personal belief about the Ideal Org program. Yeah, I know that he actually believes it. And then he, you know, when the thing's over, he's like, it doesn't look any different than a scam. I mean, there's no different than a failed crazy idea and a scam. Once the crazy idea fails, there's no difference between a land grab and believing in Ideal Orgs once they're empty. It just looks like a land grab. So, you know, it's like,
Do you know something's occurring to me right now? I'd like to share with you because I'd like to hear your perspective on this. Thinking about the history of this, I'm really glad we kind of went historical on this because I'm looking at L. Ron Hubbard's development of a number of things in the late 70s. Films were a huge part of that. Right. You were intimately involved with it, so you're familiar with all that history. At the same time that was happening, as a tech guy in Scientology, I was not as hyper aware of the films except to look at them as an additional tool in the toolbox of how to train people. That's how I thought about films.
Right.
But there was a lot more that happened in that 1977, 78, 79 time period with the technology of Scientology that I'd like to comment on for a minute, because I rarely get a chance to talk about this as part of this whole thing, but superpower was part of this. At that time, Hubbard was dealing with, as you said, faulty, error-ridden crew members who didn't know what they were doing because they were not trained in how to make films. And Hubbard wanted OT. He wanted cause over life. You're good enough. You're strong enough. Get it done, right? And that was all the training you need.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of, insane all by itself. But he developed crashing misunderstood word finding, false data stripping, debug tech, the world out of com eval, which was a rundown by Hubbard of what's wrong with the world. And what's wrong with the world, according to him, is that the world was out of communication.
Right.
So the clay table processing on the ProTR's course, all of this was in this short time period.
That's right.
And
you left out a big one, but
What did I miss?
FPRD.
That was later. Are
you sure that I thought that was around 78? Because I know that
84 is when it was released.
Okay, 84. Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay.
84. So what was in 78 was the Tech Correction Roundup, which was New Era Dianetics for OTs, and New Era Dianetics was also coming out at this time. This was the third version of Dianetics on an e-meter. It had gone Dianetics, then it had gone like standard Dianetics, and then there was New Era Dianetics.
Right.
So that was coming out at this time. There was a whole revamp on the PTSSP stuff. There was a whole kind of big thing that happened around that time, is all I'm trying to say here.
Right.
And it was Hubbard's Golden Age Tech. It was Hubbard's let's revamp it all and repackage it all and get it out there to everybody. And it was at this time that the prices started going up. They did the solution for inflation thing. And they started raising the prices like 10% every month for, a period of time. Scientology got real expensive in the late 70s. And that all happened in that time period as a response to all of this, the raid and all this bad stuff happening, kind of topped off with the Way to Happiness in 1980. So here's all this stuff coming out. And kind of what I'm thinking is it was Hubbard's wrong why, if you will. And for Scientologists, ex-Scientologists who know what I'm talking about, it's taking all of the things that have not worked up until now and triple downing on them, double downing and triple downing on them. No, they do work. This is what we have to do, and we're going to do it even harder. And it crashed Scientology is what it did, right? The whole mission fiasco and everything else.
Yeah, such an interesting thought, Chris, because I never actually connected the idea that what he did in the 70s back then was like his goal was later Miscavige's Golden Age Tech was like a redux of that whole deal. So that's just part of the cycle.
Like Hubbard, like Miscavige. And I never until we were talking today, I never really quite framed it that way. And I thought, holy shit, this is worth commenting on, because Miscavige is again walking in the same footsteps L. Ron Hubbard already did and failed at, and Miscavige is failing just like Hubbard did. And the true believer concept of him makes it make sense, because it's like that's the only reason you would repeat Hubbard's mistakes is because you believe in him so firmly. You can't see he died pitiful and alone, and that's where Miscavige is heading. So it's just so interesting to see those parallels.
It's amazing. I wanted to talk about some of the specific drills that are on Superpower.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Let's
yeah,
get
no,
it.
but I don't know that I think it's trivial compared to this conversation we're having, because
Oh, okay.
this is about much bigger things.
Yeah.
And it's, I've recently reconnected with a very special ex Sea Org officer and executive who will be talking on YouTube soon when we're.
Hey.
But something that this person made me aware of something that I did not know. This might be a little too inside baseball, but when Miscavige, when he took over RTC and he ousted the previous RTC head, which Vicky Asner, I never knew her, but that happened not long before I went up there. She had been given these two orders by Hubbard. These were the controlling orders for RTC, and they were get the films done and get marketing organized, right? That was all of the machinations that were put into getting me up to gold were as a result of those two orders. There was a lot of things that happened I never understood that were as a result of those two orders. And the way that Miscavige screwed the pooch, I mean, we did get the tech films done, and there was a lot of really good marketing. In the long run, they're all going to get done anyway. And the marketing is, everybody says it's slick, but it sucks. And it's only aimed at internal public to get them to donate more money and more time.
That's it.
You know what I mean. It's not, the marketing isn't aimed at anything else. But along with these orders, Hubbard, it was made very clear that they were not supposed to be engaged in professionals, because that opened the door for outside influences, for external influences. You know that word. That's a real poison.
Oh, yeah.
That's a poison word in Scientology, external influence. So it was like, yeah, they went through this whole period where they're like, trying again, just like Hubbard was doing with the film crew, making them into filmmakers and marketers and really good Sea Org members that were 100% not prone to being corrupted by external influences. And yet, everything you see in Scientology, the films, all of the slick stuff at Scientology Media Productions, all of the slick stuff that comes out of gold, it all ended up having to be done by engaging with professionals that were either Scientologists, such as myself, or not, just professionals in their field. And it's kind of like there is no greater testament to the failure of Hubbard's edicts, his advices, his writings, the technology that he pointed at, than the fact that they could get nothing done unless they engaged with people who knew none of that and could care less about it, but were accidentally seduced into cooperating with them. It's a fact.
That's right. I'll absolutely, and I'll tell you the craziness of it from inside. At least at my level, for me, as my experience as a Sea Org member was, they were lucky to work with us.
Yeah.
They were, they should be so lucky as to be exposed to, the miracle of the Sea Org and our amazing efficiency.
Yeah.
And we're always having to correct their OPs, their overt.
Yeah.
Right?
And also that you would expose them to certain procedures and policies as laid down by Hubbard, and they should be on their knees thanking you because you were enhancing them.
That's
you
right.
were anointing them with this magic material.
Yeah.
It was just such bullshit. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, it was awful. It took me a few years, more than I'm really comfortable with, to realize how bad our products were, because we pumped ourselves up on it so often.
Yeah, I mean, gold is a perfect example. So much of gold was designed and built by the staff up there before they engaged outside design. I mean, the place the landscaping is great, and They got really good training. It's a lot easier to train somebody to be an arborist than to be a cinematographer.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people do have more talent. Our good friend, Sterling Tompkins, when he, as a kid, when Sterling was busted out of, we did a show recently, and when Sterling was busted out of CMO Gold and ended up on the grounds, he became a tree guy. And there's been a few guys, one of them left and has a business. He's a noted arborist, which is a real talent. But for the most part, I mean, it's like, it's just, the whole place is like knotty pine and a blue tiled. I mean, it's just hideous. I mean, to me, it's nice and it's clean and it's a great facility, and the castle is a great facility, but it's just. But then you compare that with Scientology Media Productions. By that time, they were working with the world-renowned architecture firm Gensler Associates, who were in charge of all the ideal orgs. And at the height of the ideal org program, same thing. The Gensler office in Santa Monica, where the ideal org program was run, they had dedicated 70 architects working on the ideal org program. And this is a massive program.
Wow. 70. And I never imagined that many. Damn.
No, because I was there. I met with them. I had to turn over, because after we designed the Div 6, we had to turn that over to them to implement it in all the orgs and to do the space planning, because we designed it for an ideal org of 60,000 feet, because the ideal Div 6 was 20,000 feet. And then they would adjust the floor planning, the space planning. They would adjust it as needed. Incredibly talented guys. I mean, these were people that worked on the Apple Store, developed the Apple Store, developed Nike Town. I mean, these are like big players. There was a guy named, it's funny, there was a guy named Erwin Miller. Erwin, I hope you don't mind me mentioning your name. Great guy, who was he's not with Gensler anymore. He has his own firm. He's a very noted Southern California architect. And I think he was like a VP. He was what we call my father was an architect, so I know all about this stuff. But he was what you call a lead designer, which is the architect in charge. And so he was in charge of the whole thing. He did the ship. Like, he's the guy that redesigned the ship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, did the renovations on the ship. He did. Okay. They did Scientology Media Productions, and he did all the ideal orgs. Incredibly talented guy. I really had great admiration for him. And Erwin, he wasn't a Scientologist, lovely guy, but he was a darling of the OT committee set, because he would come. They'd always invite him. And he was invited to events. He was like a big celebrity in Scientology. They'd fly him to the IAS event, and it.
Wow!
Literally, it was. And I've looked on their site, on Gensler's site, and I've looked on Erwin's site. He has his own company now, and they never. I mean, they talk about these people have designed. Gensler's designed like probably half the hotels in Las Vegas and a third of the modern airports in the world. I mean, they're an architectural firm and the management company. So they actually managed all the production, construction production. They're massive. And
wow.
Miscavige is really smart to hook up with them, because they saved the church tons of money by being able to work on a global scale and get things done simultaneously. He contracted with a furniture company in Germany that made all the furniture, like custom furniture for each org, and the orders were so massive.
Well,
saved a ton of money.
Yeah, no, I know on a lot of those chairs and stuff. Let me say, we on the RPF had something to do with some of that furniture too.
No, you did. You absolutely did. Well, and the mill made a lot of stuff.
So much stuff.
Yeah, the mill did all the signage.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like the vast majority of the big contract furniture, which is what they refer to that in the business, was done some German company that they contracted with. Because that was Miscavige, like his strategy and tactical IQ is very high, off the charts. His emotional IQ is like he's challenged. He's emotionally challenged. I guess that is a psychopath, right? Isn't that like
a little bit?
You've studied more about that than I have, but I think this tactical IQ high, emotional IQ low. I think that's a psychopath. So, but it was impressive to be around him in terms of that if you were benefiting, as I would, mostly from strategy and tactics, you were in this bubble where he was an amazing guy. But
Right.
if you were in the bubble where in the other bubble where his emotional IQ was very low, you were locked in the hole, and you
Oh
were
yeah.
you
How
were
I'm thinking right now because I want to say that, my experience as a Sea Org member, I can still remember this so clearly, was so different from the things you're saying that I can't help but remark on this from the inside, the view from the inside
right,
of the bubble world
right.
was we were the ones doing all that. Now
Really, wow.
I get the delusion, right? I do.
Well,
But I'm
there was a
telling
lot.
you, I never imagined they were doing that much work for us. I thought we were sort of contracting some architectural. I mean, this is how bad it was inside.
No.
I thought we were contracting them for some planning work.
No.
And that landlord office were the guys who were hard at work designing the buildings and working out
eventually, the Inn landlord office did take over space planning, because it was kind of difficult for WOGs to get the space planning down because because of the functions within an org, things need to be certain ways. But I think they were able to take it over only because they'd had so much experience working with Gensler that it was
right.
So in the architects office, I mean, they would really manage the projects internally and do space planning and blah, blah, blah. But in terms of working out the designs and the motifs of each building, that was specifically done by Gensler. I mean, these guys are like rock stars. There's maybe only a handful of companies in the entire world that operate on that level. So,
how interesting. I'm just just readjusting the thinking here, but
I remember when they did one of the orgs in Italy, which is just really beautiful and has all this sort of faux stonework that's based on ancient Italian stuff. And there's a standard thing in architecture is you create these boards. I guess people would call them they're spec boards, and they have renderings, architectural renderings, and then they have every sample of every texture, every fabric. It's all coded back to a source where it's going to come from. And I saw a lot of those boards, and that's pretty amazing. The work that when it had nothing to do with the series, of course, it was all approvable by Miscavige, but he's going to approve it. I mean, because the guy doesn't have any taste. I mean, Miscavige was one of the most tasteless people I ever met. If he had taste, it was because somebody said, this is good taste. And then he'd own it and he'd become the expert of it. It was pretty amazing. You'd think he was this taste master, like a real taste master, right? But he has no style. He's the least. People think, okay, a person that has style can go into their closet and put together clothes, or go shopping and put things together that nobody's ever seen before. It's just for them. The guy's going to wear a Gucci suit with a pair of Nikes, or whatever, that nobody does. That's a person who has style. But taste, you can't buy style, but you can buy taste. You get what I'm saying? Like, you cannot. Absolutely. You can buy good taste. You just go to where the trends are and you do that. And I can give you a perfect example of this. I mean, this is really such a weird thing. But when I was doing the orientation film, the first one with Lyric Anderson, you can, if you look at that, if you just look at his suit is the perfect blue suit. It's not only the perfect blue suit, it's the perfect shade of blue, because I spent weeks film testing different shades of wool gabardine before we had the suit made. Okay.
Really?
Everything about that suit is perfect. And everything, the tie and the color of the tie, the knot in the tie, you would go to cramming and maybe the RPF if you did a tie wrong, right? There's a certain way. And all of this was mandated and dictated by David Miscavige. And you would think, oh my God, this guy knows everything about clothes, but he doesn't, because his tailor, which was somebody said, you should go to this tailor. So he would go to the tailor, and then he just has new money. He's just like ripped off a bunch of cash. And that's how he does this. There's a guy named Alan Flusser, who's a world famous men's fashionista kind of guy. And he wrote this book called Clothes and the Man. And he became famous because when Oliver Stone made the film Wall Street, he hired Flusser to decode the fashion of wardrobe, the men's of Wall Street, the men's wardrobe of Wall Street.
Right.
And it's in a book called Clothes on the Man. And that was Miscavige's Bible. And, you know, when I started working on orientation, I got sent that book, and it was like, this is how it's going to be. So
Interesting.
everything was like that. He had no taste unless me or Tom Cruise or somebody brought it to his attention and said, you know, and it's like he didn't. The only thing he's really good at, I think, is telling lawyers what to do. I think he's good at that.
He's pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Hey, I got somebody asking a question that's kind of in line with what we're talking about here a little bit in terms of some of this history that I've been kind of wondering about too, and I wanted to ask you about since we have the opportunity here. Do you mind?
Not at all.
Awesome. Because I think you and I spoke about this or emailed about this at some point, but I don't know that we've done this publicly, and that was Revolt in the Stars.
Oh,
yeah.
You just said, I don't know if we've done this publicly. Like, I never know what's going to come next.
I know, right?
No. Yeah. I read that. I read it. Actually, I read it really randomly when I was like kicking around Celebrity Center after I got in. I got off drugs. I was back in school. You know, maybe I just got out of school. No, I think I was still in school. I was a quote unquote filmmaker or film student or whatever. I mean, I really was, but
right.
There were some guys, I don't know who they were. They had an office on Sunset Strip. I guess you could still get an office there. Today you couldn't unless you, I mean, that's so expensive there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think back in the 70s, you can maybe get a upstairs office. It was right around Sweetser and Sunset, just catty corner from the famous Tower Records, down the street from the Whiskey, just to give you some reference points. And it was a production office. They were a bunch of Scientologists, and they were going to produce the film like independently, right? They were going to produce Revolt in the Stars, and anyway, I read it and I thought it was really stupid, and then I went and I thought it was really bad. No,
OT3, right?
What's that?
This is before you had done OT3.
Yeah. I hadn't done it yet, but I thought it was really stupid. And I thought the people were really kind of stupid, and they were so glassy-eyed and fixated on making this film. And I didn't want to get involved with them. I never went back to the office. I got invited there to see if maybe I was a potential resource for working on it.
Can hear somebody in the background there. The wonders of live broadcasts.
Yeah.
How interesting, though. So you were kicking around back then. So this was something. This was by the time I hit Scientology in the 80s, Revolt in the Stars was something that was hidden away and locked up. Like nobody talked about it.
Yeah, I don't know how this happened with these guys had it. I just don't know, because I didn't know anything about it.
Interesting. Well, they were actually making an effort, and I think money got involved, and there was some goofy investment thing, but they could never raise the money. I don't think they made more than a couple $100,000, and they needed a lot more than that to produce.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to.
There's a whole story to it, I think.
I'm trying to think, when did Star Wars came out, in 78 or 75? When was it?
77.
Right. Yeah. So this would have been right around that time. Probably it had just come out and created a bunch of interest in it.
Yeah. Oh, Hubbard. I know Hubbard wanted it made, but it was such garbage. I can't call it a screenplay. I mean, what bops around on the internet is not a screenplay. It's more of a novella or something, or a sort of short story version of it.
I've never encountered it. I mean, I don't remember it had the whole loyal officer and the galactic, all that kind of stuff. It didn't really go into the whole BT thing. It didn't. It did not touch it. It didn't. No, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't go into that. It was just everything around that.
That's right. It's the whole story without the spiritual aspect or the implants. None of that is part of it. Just the destructive part of it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and the genocide and all that, and the ridiculousness of it. I mean, it's laid out so poorly. It's such a badly conceived concept.
Yeah, and also the biggest problem I had, because I produced all the so many scripts and that he wrote and then interpreted a lot of his writing that was not intended for film, but put it on film as that. But with respect to the films, the characters that he wrote, they didn't speak differently. If they spoke in a different voice, it was a very cartoon, one-dimensional voice.
Yes.
And I always had trouble with that because he always tried to write what we call potboilers. You know that's something which is specifically aimed at at the populace, like something that's going to be popular, like Marvel movies and stuff. Like, although they've managed to raise those up to a pretty high art, but a potboiler is not like a piece of art per se. So, and he was always writing pulps and potboilers, and people would talk about him like he was Shakespeare, but I never a fan of his writing at all. It was just so lowbrow. It was very lowbrow.
That's how I thought of it the whole time I was in Scientology as well, in terms of his fiction writing. I always had a very clear divide in my mind between his fiction and his nonfiction. And
exactly. Absolutely.
I didn't want to cross that line very often. The only thing I had any real respect for was Battlefield Earth at the time. I've since, come to look at it a little bit more quickly.
Right.
But Battlefield Earth was something I thought was truly a good work, and I could not stand the Mission Earth series. I couldn't stand them. It was crazy trying to read those books.
I couldn't get past one book.
Nah, they
were
so just
horrible.
Awful. It was such a slugfest. By the time I was in book number 6, I was just kind of reading it to be a loyal Scientologist.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was so creepy. It was pervy. It was
God, it was so bad. Oh, it was so awful.
Creepy.
It was just gross. What about the scripts? This is something I was meaning to ask you about, the scripts and stuff. When he would write the scripts for the tech films and stuff, were his characters were they kind of presented the same way as his stories? Did you have to kind of buff those up?
I never changed any dialogue, but I would work really hard on the characterizations because they tended to be. It's difficult to write. For one thing, it's difficult to write dialogue that sounds anything other than how you talk. So it's just hard. And I did have to. I struggled with that somewhat. So, but the biggest struggle was, and I've spoken about this before, is because the people he worked with on the crew were so novices, right? I mean, almost novices is almost giving them too much credit. So he invented, I don't know if we spoke about this, maybe we did. He invented his own script format.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. Yeah,
what we did. That was crazy.
Yeah, we talked about that. That was difficult because it was so chopped up into little instructions.
Right.
From dialogue and camera angles and musical cues, and it was so chopped up that you never were reading an actual film. So I had to have them converted over to like a standard screenplay format in order to actually read it and like kind of absorb it as a story. So but he didn't because he gave orders is what he did. And so he turned the script into just a series of very minute orders for everybody to follow. Right. Yeah. So
he did not have a very high opinion of people, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. I think when you're a sociopathic narcissist, you hate everybody.
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah, because you're so full of shame.
That was Hubbard. Constant. And and if we're to believe how those personalities behave in private, and from many of the anecdotes that we have of how he acted in private, he kind of loathed himself as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I mean, I have to tell you, just going back to Superpower.
Yeah. I was gonna kind of take us back there.
When I was working on it, one of my heroes, I meant to grab his book as a designer. It was kind of the I don't want to say the creator, but the most important figure in architecture and design well, especially design from mid-century. The guy who really invented mid-century design is a guy named Charles Eames, right? A lot of people have heard of Charles Eames. If you just looked at his furniture and so forth, I mean, I'm sitting in an Eames chair that was designed in 1952, and it's just still used in science fiction movies. Still look like it came from the future. This guy was one of the most amazing designers, a huge influence on me and my work. And a lot of people don't know that he was also a filmmaker. He and his wife Ray they had a studio a home in Los Angeles where they worked. The whole mid-century modern movement came out of Southern California, out of Los Angeles, and he made 20 films about very interesting subjects, very interesting, mostly about design. He and his wife. You can still get them. There's like a box set, the 20 films of Charles Eames. One of these films is very famous. It's called Powers of 10. And I suggest people search it on YouTube and watch it. It's from maybe 1955. I'm not sure exactly. But basically, it starts with a down angle, straight down at a couple having a picnic on a blanket at a park. And I don't know what the dimension is, but I think it's 10 meters. That would be 30 feet. I think it's 10. And then it says, now let's jump back. Let's add a power of 10. And they jump back and they jump back and they jump back. And it only takes something like 15 jumps and you're at the edge of the universe.
Yep.
And it's really fascinating.
Yep.
And then the whole thing reverses and they jump. And he pulled this off without computers, without, he was a designer and mostly a furniture designer. And then the film reverses and it goes in and it goes back to where it started. And then it goes in, same thing, 10 times in, 10 times in, 10 times power of 10. And it goes onto the woman. There's a mosquito on her arm and it goes through the snoot of the mosquito into the bloodstream. And then you end up in inside the nucleus of an atom. And it's sort of this incredible film that shows you the universe is in its infinitude in two directions, right?
Right.
And I had always been just in love with this film. And so when I worked on Superpower, they said, and one of the things that I did, every single drill, it has an orientation film, like a 2-minute film that you watch, and it tells you what you need about the drill and what you need to do.
Yep.
So I made all these films, right? And so the one for relative size, they said, we have made a deal with Charles Eames' estate so that we can include Powers of 10 as the orientation film for relative body size, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, no fucking way. So I was so opposed to that because to me the film was so sacred, and they wanted forget the fact that I was a Scientologist. They were going to dilute the brand. That's not the brand, right? I couldn't stand the idea that this film. So I remade it. I just made my own version, and it cost a ton of money. But it's based on the exact. And somebody else had done it, had also made a modern version with what's his name, a famous actor who did the voiceover. A very famous actor. So there was already two versions, the original and another one that took advantage of modern special effects, because that idea is just like, it's just like needs to be done that way. So then I made another, my own version just for Superpower, and I'm so glad I did that, especially after I left and, I ripped the crap off my eyeballs and actually could see all the shit. And how David Miscavige has like manipulated me the same way he did everybody else. He just did it with kindness with me, and I was so glad that I didn't go along with having Charles Eames Powers of 10 in the Superpower building.
Right. Let me ask you. It's possible that what I'm thinking of right now is a coincidence, but I've got to go down this little thread with you here.
Sure.
And describe it in such detail. Do you remember, and it would be really cool if you could remember when Miscavige and you, or when that was happening?
When which was happening?
the Charles Eames, let's get this, let's
Oh
use
yeah,
this.
absolutely. That was
What year was that?
Okay, so that was, when did the building open? To 2013. Yeah,
Mhm,
2013 the building opened.
mhm.
And so the last thing that had to happen before they could open the building was the superpower project that I was working on.
Mm.
That was a thing, and that would have been, it would have been between 2010 and 2013.
Okay.
Probably around, I would sort of put it around 2011, 2012.
Interesting. Well, let me tell you this little story about some more Scientology Sea Org nonsense with Miscavige directly. That is years earlier than this. So it's an interest. So I'm going to chalk this up to an interesting coincidence, but maybe not. But let me tell you this, because I doubt you've ever heard of this before. This was something that was done at the PAC base when I was an AOLA staff member of the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles. That's the building where they deliver the OT levels. And the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles at that time was responsible for making OTs in the entire Western Hemisphere. You know, there was Clearwater and Flag, which also makes OTs, but the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles that's its area of operation is the entire American, you know, Canada, North America, South America.
Right, right.
So one fine day, and this was around 2003-ish or 4-ish, I'm thinking. Couldn't have been later than 2004. Had to be around that time, because this was before I went to the RPF. We got a message from Miscavige, and it was an incredibly simple message. It was a video, and it was about 20 seconds long. And it came down to us, and it showed a map of AOLA in PAC.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it starts with this overview of PAC, and then it leaps out, way out to a citywide view, Los Angeles, and it's got a label, Los Angeles. And then it leaps out to North America, and then it leaps out to the planet, right? Yeah. And it does this in seconds. And it's bop, bop, bop. And the end message is, this is your field. What are you doing about it?
Right.
Why are you only focusing on Los Angeles?
Right.
Was the message.
Right.
Because of a 20-second video we received from David Miscavige personally, this came from him to us via the RTC office, we derailed everything that was going on to refocus all of our efforts on tours to Canada, South America, right? All over the US, because we had 2 tours regs who were out, in other words, people out external to Los Angeles trying to sell services for AOLA. There were 2 guys who were always out doing that, and that was it. And Miscavige was sort of like, hey, you fucking assholes, you're not doing your job, right? Was sort of the implied message.
Yeah, sure.
But he used that method, that Eames sort of zoom out thing, and I just couldn't help but think of that this second you brought it up, and I thought, what the hell, man? That is such a coincidence, because it was 10 years prior to the superpower thing, and it was absolutely a Miscavige thing. It was communicated to us super clearly that this was coming from the top.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that before I ever when I started working on it, they'd already made the deal with Eames estate. Like that was already, they'd already done that. So that video would have been floating around and he would have seen it.
Right.
So very well, it could have been, you know, like, I can use this to make my people feel really guilty. This is perfect.
Exactly. Exactly. See, it's almost like you know, he didn't do this with the Roofenstahl thing, but you almost imagine he'd want to, you know, like somehow he's going to take this thing, he's going to take this weird sort of thing that not too many people like really pay a lot of attention to, and somehow he's going to use it to just fuck with you. He's just going to mess with you.
Yeah, totally. Well, you know? I'm sure he saw that video and then instantly thought, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to just shove these guys into it because they're, exactly. You know, they're Yeah, it's so funny that how, I mean, I could go on endlessly about how Miscavige and others like to get people in trouble because they themselves are not doing their job. I mean, so much of what he was blaming you guys for in terms of the size of that field, it was his job to make sure that it happened. And it's just like when shortly after I was at Golden, I got pulled into Senior CS Inc.'s office. That time was Sean Eastman, who was soon after that busted to the motor pool, and he's going to spend the rest of his life doing oil changes and washing cars. But we'd shot a bad e-meter read. I wasn't in trouble, but I was made to witness the sort of verbal brutality that they aimed at their staff. So the Senior CS Inc.'s office, they're supposed to look at what we shot, and if there's a bad meter read, tell us and we'll redo it.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, they did their job by finding a bad meter read, which only cost like, $1.380 to reshoot. But these poor SEER members got so verbally brutalized. I've never seen people so frightened in my life. I mean, the whole idea is they'd find the read, they prevent it from being exported, everything would be fine. So instead of saying, hey, we did our job, we found an error, fix it, it was just like, do you realize that if this had gotten out, this could have corrupted the entire technology of Scientology and destroyed it worldwide? And and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, you mean if you hadn't done your job? That's what would happen. Yeah, they really know how to flip. They call it flipping the script, right, Chris?
That's right.
They flip the script. Yeah.
That's what they do on you. And it is absolutely genius because it takes a good and it turns it into a bad, the same event. Nothing's about what happened, but we're going to look at it through this microscopic lens of sadism and make you out to be the worst bad guy because somebody committed an error, exactly as you said. When the system accounts for that and deals with that, and it's not because it's a genius system, it's just the system does. But it
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What a mess, man. What a mess.
Yeah, I almost feel like I needed to take a shower after talking about all that because it's just, you're just kind of wading back through that fucking BS. It's just like,
I know. It's awful stuff. It's awful stuff. But it's always insightful for people because they need to get that it's not subtle sometimes. Sometimes they're beating you with the rubber hoses, and then other times it's super subtle.
Well, often the worst trauma is the one that you are triggered to do unto yourself.
That's right.
It's not the one that you got a bruise from or walked away bloody, but the one that somehow some aspect of yourself, whether it's your empathy or your idealism or something, got turned against you. So, I mean, I'm not, I've never studied mental health or psychology, but from my experience, there's like two kinds of trauma. There's like the one that comes from the outside, and then there's the one that you just kind of do to yourself because of the circumstances that you're in. And that's really tough, because I was never thrown in the hole or beaten or whatever, although I did experience some pretty severe bullying and verbal abuse towards the end, and I was done not long after that. But that stuff's the worst. I mean, it's just like, the wounds and the bruises, those things heal. The body's really resilient, and the other stuff, you're just, whoa, you just carry it around. You don't even know it. So
no, it takes a while to deal with it because you're nailing the exact insidious point of it, which is you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah, they actually get you to do it to yourself.
That's right.
That's why I think when we all saw the title, "The Prison of Belief," we were like, "Yep, nailed it."
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I to this day, I still don't have a better turn of phrase.
No, there isn't one. That one's perfect.
I think he absolutely nailed it. That's what Pulitzer Prize-winning authors get to do. They get to nail it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could have a contest. If anybody can beat that, we'll give them something. I don't know.
Oh, I would. Yeah, I would love. Yeah, because it's wild, man.
Yeah. So there you go, folks. If anybody can come up with a more pointed, cogent phrase to describe in 2 words what Scientology does better than 3 words.
3 words.
Prison of Belief. Chris is going to send you a T-shirt. Sorry, Chris, but
that's right.
I don't have any. I don't have any gear. If I have any swag by then, I'll pony up and add something.
Yes, absolutely. Merch. Yeah, it's insidious. It's very, very insidious, because here's what happens, and this is maybe something that people can walk away from this with, if we're trying to impart some stories, but we're also trying to impart some, moral to the lesson or whatever.
Right.
It's that what you walk away with from that, and the thing that really gets you in the long run, is the negative self-imaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by that I mean, right, when you walk around talking about what an idiot you are to yourself.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I failed Scientology, Chris.
Did you?
I failed them. I mean, it was like, that's the state you get yourself in. I failed to live up to the standards, the ethical standards, and the blah, blah, blah. It's just,
Oh, of course you did.
yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that you have to escape, is having failed them. So that's how they control you.
That's right. That even after you leave. And it's also, by the way, I mean, I'm just gonna. This is my opinion. Okay. I'm not gonna pull out some study to tell you this, but I'm gonna say, from my experience, it's the number one reason not resolving that negative self-image problem. It becomes a habit, and that's how you end up in another cult.
Wow. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Right.
Or an abusive relationship.
That's right. Same thing. Exactly.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That happened to me right after I got out. But fortunately, it was short-lived, and I never saw it coming, because you are so programmed to just, be love bombed, and it's bizarre.
Exactly.
But I don't want people to forget the other lesson to walk away from: that superpower is a total con. Okay,
yes. So, oh my God.
And I know, because I helped to make the con. So I made the cheese in the cheese factory. So I can tell you.
Talking about that sausage. Oh yeah, it's awful, man. It's awful. Yeah. And it's hilarious how we can talk so openly now about the duplicity of it. Because it's not Hubbard. It's not even Hubbard. It's not even Hubbard. It's just bullshit, made up stuff. I mean, you made stuff up. Miscavige has been making stuff up for years. A lot of people put a lot of creativity into Scientology. Guess what? Spoiler, they also did that when Hubbard was around. When he was around, it wasn't all his either.
No, and we left. I mean, we left. If you go to my channel, and Scientology, The Big Lie, and you go to my channel, I put a book promo on there. I'm sure you've all seen it. 20-second book promo. It's designed exactly to look like a Dianetics ad. Jeff Levin, who did the music for Dianetics, he scored me a piece of music like Dianetics, so I wouldn't be sued. The woman who was Jeff Hawk, somebody who was very involved in administering the whole marketing campaign, is helping me finish my book off. I mean, their satellites are being used against them. Remember that line in Independence Day? Yeah.
Independence Day.
Yeah, we're using their satellites against them. So no more. Hey, there's a couple of super chats here, Chris, that I think.
Yeah. What do we got?
We have one from Stephanie Sandoval. Thanks for a super sticker. Thank you very much, Sandy. And my good friend Joe, Joe DeCeppo. Chris Shelton's superpower is helping people peel their onions and understand what happened to them. Keep up the great content. Thanks, Joe. We're a little behind on communicating with one another. We'll catch up. And then my girl, Rev Girl, says it's a good day to be part of SBTV. Yeah, it is. Danny Masterson got convicted to life in prison, and Chris Shelton and I went on the air and talked about it, and then gas bagged for an hour and a half. So it is a good day.
This was fun. Really
a pleasure. Yeah, it's a total pleasure. Awesome. Okay, so I guess we're going to bring this to a controlled landing.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to drop the flaps and put the landing gear down and tell everybody to be kind to yourselves and take care of each other. And Chris, I hope to talk to you again soon. I'm sure I will.
You bet.
And we're going to go out with a little treat from my dog. Here we go.
Awesome.